Is this really what the Red Sox are building towards? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and this offseason has been frustrating to say the least. But the big question here is why? Why have this type of offseason after everything you went through going into the offseason, after everything that's gone on over the last couple of years? Now, some people may sit there and say it's because ownership is cheap, they don't care about winning, or they care more about their other projects, their other teams, and are using the Red Sox as a cash cow. And while I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you, I also don't think that this Red Sox ownership, this Red Sox front office is flying completely blind. I think there is a plan in place. The question is, what does that plan look like? Now, there's one theory out there right now that could make just way too much sense and could possibly be exactly what the Red Sox are building towards. The problem is, it might suck for this fan base. So what we're going to do in today's videos, we're going to break this theory down. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why it makes so much sense. We're going to talk about why it might suck for us as fans. And we're going to talk about what this might mean for the future of Red Sox baseball. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so like I always do when we start out with theory type videos, I always say that this isn't concrete, right? You are ultimately free to disagree with this, not believe in this. It is completely and utterly a theory right now. This is not concrete fact. The other thing I always say before we start these videos is that I did not come up with this theory. In fact, some of our Red Seat community members have actually been talking about this for a little bit now. If you are one of those people, make sure you raise your hand in the comments down below, get your recognition. And on top of that, most recently, Robbie Hyde did a deep dive analysis on this theory on Twitter, and he did an excellent job. If you aren't following him over there, make sure you guys follow him on Twitter and obviously subscribe to his YouTube. He's a fantastic baseball creator. But either way, what Robbie and others have outlined here is that the Red Sox aren't truly trying to compete and are building towards 2026. And unfortunately for Red Sox fans, this makes a ton of sense, and let me outline why. The first reason is because of everything we've been hearing from Red Sox ownership, not just this offseason, but the last few offseasons as well. Well, the first thing I want to point out is that basically, since the hiring of Chaim Bloom, there's been an emphasis on one thing from ownership, and that is sustainable winning. It was a word spoken when they hired Chaim Bloom, it was words spoken when they fired Chaim Bloom, and it was the exact same words that they uttered when they hired Craig Breslow. And all three of those things have one common denominator, and that is the Red Sox trying to build a sustainable winner. The other thing that we know over the past couple of seasons from ownership is they have an unwillingness to flex their financial limits. Basically, since 2020, they've been really conservative with the way they spend their dollars. 2022, you go over the luxury tax, but barely. 2023, you stay well under the luxury tax. And in this offseason, 2024, it is clear that there is a budget somewhere under the first luxury tax threshold. You combine those two things, and what do you get? You get essentially the Red Sox trying to build a new model of sustainable winners that we're seeing throughout Major League Baseball. Teams like the Astros, the Braves, the Rays have been doing this for years, and what they've been doing is they've been building sustainable winning cores from within their farm system and supplementing them pretty minorly with additions on the free agent market or via trade. The Houston Astros have done it basically since 2017. The Rays have been doing it for a little bit now, and the Braves have been doing it really well over the last couple of years as well. It's clear based on everything we've seen from Red Sox ownership, if you combine a sustainable success emphasis over the last few years and you combine the unwillingness to spend a ton of money, that this is what the Red Sox are building towards. But why 2026? Why would 2026 be the year for the Red Sox to truly start competing again? Well, once again, we head back to facts to back up this theory. Now, the Red Sox right now have a really solid young core of players on this team, specifically within their positional player pool, right? You've got Rafael Devers being sort of the big pillar here. You've got Tristan Casas following him up pretty quickly. You've got some veteran people who are signed for a pretty long period of time who could be legitimate pillar pieces like Trevor Story and Masataka Yoshida. Then you've got others who may or may not be legitimate pillars like Jarren Duran, Wilyer Abreu, Ceddanne Rafaela, but by 2026, that core is going to look a whole lot different. It could look a whole lot better. Your top 3 prospects in the Red Sox system right now, the guys who are all top 100 prospects, probably by the end of the year, all top 50, maybe even top 20 prospects in the game, are not only going to be ready for Major League Baseball, but they're going to be settled in and probably in their second full season in the league, ready to absolutely dominate. By the time you get to 2026, this team could be absolutely loaded with young, controllable talent. You could be possibly looking at a lineup of Kyle Teel at catcher, Tristan Casas at first base, Trevor Story at second base, Vaughn Grissom at third base, Marcelo Meyer at shortstop, Masataka Yoshida or Wilyer Abreu in left field, Duran or Rafaela in center field, Roman Anthony in right field, and Rafael Devers at DH. To me, this is a legitimate, sustainable, winning team that is in that sort of smaller, flexible budget that the Red Sox are looking for. This could be the legitimate team that competes with those Braves, with those Astros, and with those Rays for that a type of system where you're reloading your team not with free agents, but with players from your farm system. Now, obviously, there's a chance that some of these guys get traded, but over the weekend, Alex Spear reported that the Red Sox have been unwilling to move their top 3 prospects. What this says to me, and what this should say to a lot of people, is that the Red Sox are holding on to these guys and believe that these players, the Roman Anthonys, the Marcelo Meyer, and the Kyle Teels of the world, are going to be the pillars of their next championship club. If they aren't going to trade them, they're going to want to have them as the core for their next championship team, and that would be right around that 2026 timeline. On top of that, if we look at other areas of this Red Sox team and how they've been handling the offseason, it's been sort of a similar tale. They've been pretty hell-bent in free agency on not trying to have long-term contracts. They lost out on Teoscar Hernandez because they weren't willing to give him more than 2 years. The Shota Imanga bid that the Red Sox put in was for 2 years with some options to possibly get to 4 years, and right now there's rumors that Jorge Soler is going to end up somewhere else because the Red Sox aren't trying to deal with more than 2 years on a contract. Where does that put all of these guys? It puts the Red Sox with financial flexibility going into 2026. You can look at the trade market, and the Red Sox have been pretty hell-bent there as well in not going for short-term rentals. They've checked in on guys like Dylan Cease, Corbin Burns, but overall, even since the beginning of the offseason, it's been pretty clear that the Red Sox, if they are going to make a trade this offseason, a significant trade, it's going to be for a legitimate, young, controllable starter. It's going to be for someone who has a lot of time left with this big league club before they hit free agency. Why would that be? Well, because if they are trying to compete in 2026, they don't want to have to deal with, hey, we traded away, say, a legitimate core piece here for Corbin Burns, and he's going to leave in 2025, and we're going to miss that window. So if you look at everything the Red Sox have done this offseason, it kind of does point towards them being competitive in 2026. And this does seem like a really solid, logical theory as to what the Red Sox are building towards, but there are a couple of flaws in this plan. So let's talk about those, and let's also talk about why Red Sox fans might not like this idea. To me, there are 3 major flaws in this theory. The first is, why wouldn't a guy like Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell make sense for this theory? If the Red Sox are truly looking to compete in 2026, that doesn't change the fact that your rotation isn't looking very good. 2026's rotation isn't going to look a whole lot different than 2024's rotation, and if you were to bring in someone like Monty or Snell on a 5-year deal, wouldn't that improve your 2026 team already? That's something you wouldn't have to worry about if that's when you're legitimately trying to compete. It's a similar sort of theory or plan as when you signed David Price back in 2015 leading up to that 2018 team. You brought David Price in anticipation of that. You did the same thing with Chris Sale in 2016. Wouldn't a guy like Monty or Snell at the top of your rotation going into 2026, even if it is a 4 or 5 year deal, still be in that window of competition? Why not spend on them now? The second flaw I see in this strategy is why aren't you doing the same thing with trades, right? It's the same type of theory here. If you're going to be competitive in 2026, why not go out and get a starting pitcher that not only makes you competitive this year, it also makes you competitive in 2026. A guy like Jesus Luzardo, who they aren't willing to deal for because it would cost someone big. A guy like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby. Why aren't you able to get one of those guys? Why aren't you able to get Dylan Cease and give him an extension for a couple of years and keep him here? The third big flaw in this plan, in my opinion, is this is a big risk. This is a legitimately big risk that, hey, we're relying on a majority of our prospects being successful at the big league level. Now, not all of them have to be superstars, but at least a couple of them have to end up being legitimately huge players. Can Tristan Casas sustain this long term? I believe he can, but what if he doesn't? Vaughn Grissom, he could be a big player for the Red Sox, or he couldn't. What happens if Marcelo Meyer gets up here and he's more of a Dansby Swanson than a Corey Seager? What happens if Roman Anthony comes up here and he's more of an Andrew Benintendi than he is a prime Christian Yelich? There's a lot of variation as to where these players could end up being at the major league level, and relying on them to sort of be the next true pillars of the Red Sox could be a really dangerous thing to do, and you're putting all your chips in one corner as opposed to spreading it out with free agency and with trades. Now, in terms of why this would suck with fans, we've already had two really sucky seasons, and while over the next couple of years, the Red Sox could have a 2021 year and surprise a lot of people, and maybe that's what happens, but more than likely, if this is truly what they're building towards, and they're not going to make any true significant additions to this team until you get to 2026 or leading up to 2026, you're probably in for another couple of years that look a whole lot like 23 and 22. I don't know if this fan base can handle that. I know I mentally don't know if I can do that, right? The Red Sox are already kind of on the verge of irrelevance in Boston. What's that going to look like in 2 years if the next 2 years are just as boring and just as miserable to watch as 2022 and 2023 have been? Where will this fan base be when they're ready to compete in 2026 again? The diehards will still be here. I'll probably still be making content, right? But a majority of the casual fan base really won't pay attention until they're either winning or have won. And I don't think that's a good business model for the Boston Red Sox and for true fans of this team. Like everyone who's watching this video, it's not going to be fun for us. It's not going to be fun for us to watch a team suck in 2024 and 2025 for basically over the next couple of years. That's 4 straight seasons of crappy baseball. Now, there will be things to pay attention to, the development of all these prospects, the top 3 getting into the league probably next year, Casas, how he develops, Devers, how he takes on that role, Bayo, all these things, but it's not going to be fun, competitive baseball. And if you're missing that, that could be a really big issue. And I think this is going to anger a lot of fans. Trying to be competitive in 26 as opposed to trying to be competitive every year is just simply not how the Red Sox should operate. Robbie Hyde and everyone who's come up with this theory make a lot of sense. I think if you're looking at overall in baseball, this is sort of the way things are trending. The problem with this theory is that Boston isn't Houston, Atlanta, or Tampa. Right now, we aren't paying Houston, Atlanta, or Tampa premiums. We're paying Boston premiums. And if the Red Sox are truly trying to build this model and try and get to this model, they need to figure out a balance. You need to figure out a way to have an 85 to 87 win team in the meantime, because you have the ability to do that, and you have the ability to either sign short-term deals, trade to make something happen, or spend the money that we are giving you every single year. Because flat out, honestly, what Red Sox fans deserve based on what they are paying and based on the time and dedication we give them, which is a whole lot more than most teams in Major League Baseball, right? We don't deserve to sit through an entire rebuild, an entire sort of crappy decade here where you're trying to get where you want to go. You should be trying to win every single year, and if it's not to be a legitimate World Series contender, it should at the bare minimum be a wild card team. But that's just my opinion. Again, this theory isn't laid in stone. I just think it makes so much sense based on everything we've seen this offseason and based on everything we've seen over the last couple of years. But That's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? Do you think this plan makes sense? Do you think this plan is accurate? Or do you think the Red Sox are planning something else? Or do you think they just flat out don't have a plan at all? Let me know all your thoughts on this theory and others in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.